Inside Homestead. I'm your host, Josh Padgett, and my special guest today is Mark Armiento, all the way from New York City. Mark, thank you so much for coming in today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I know you're a busy man, and we love having you come in here and give us a little bit of your time. I want to give everybody like a brief idea of who you are. We made a little video segment to kind of give a quick background of why you're here. Our city manager has known you for how many years?
A little over 20 now.
A little over 20 years. And he's done a lot of work with you within those 20 years. And we want to do this quick video segment. So let's roll the video and we'll be right back. For almost 2 decades, downtown White Plains was in a steady decline, littered with boarded up stores and 99-cent outlets. By 1998, the office vacancy rate was 31%. Blocks of abandoned stores symbolize the decay of the downtown. For 15 years, an abandoned site plagued the city's entranceway. Urban parks were rundown havens for loiterers and drug dealers. But today, White Plains has become a national model for downtown revitalization. This $350 million city center project is the cornerstone of a true economic development success story. Luxury apartments now welcome the city's 250,000 daily visitors. This neglected property that had remained abandoned for more than 2 decades is now known as Liberty Park, the first and only waterfront park in the city's history. This state-of-the-art fountain park draws thousands of visitors weekly. And this first-of-its-kind open space incubator generates funds for open space. For more than 20 years, city arts groups were unsuccessful in securing a venue to showcase live performances. And now, seasoned professionals and rising young talent grace the stage in downtown White Plains. A true economic and cultural success story, the Renaissance of White Plains. And much like White Plains, Homestead is in the beginning stages of its own renaissance. Homestead City Hall and Police Station were plagued with radon and mold, endangering our hardworking police force and city employees. But thanks to the overwhelming support from its residents, the city passed a bond referendum to facilitate the revitalization of its downtown. In August of 2014, they broke ground on what will be the cornerstone of downtown Homestead, the brand new City Hall. The new building has been taking shape rapidly. It will feature office space for city departments, a better operational flow in support of open government, and is designed to function as an emergency operations center. The new police station will help keep our community safe, and the interim police station located at the Homestead Sports Complex is already operational. Crews moved swiftly with a full transition from the old station to the temporary station back in March of 2015. The work included repairs and remodeling to make the building suitable for police work. The second project will be the revamped Seminole Theater, soon to be the cultural center for Homestead. The theater will offer a state-of-the-art performance facility with a multiplicity of community and regional functions and events. The first steps in a grand vision of a new downtown Homestead. It's amazing the work you guys have done together. Now, the reason why I'm really interested in the White Plains story, the Renaissance of White Plains, is because Homestead currently is in a very similar situation and position right now. This is a very exciting time to be here in Homestead. And I want to ask you a little bit about, like, what is this work that you have done with our city manager over these last 20 years that has produced such results?
Well, George has been phenomenal in terms of going into organizations and trying to, especially during adverse times, trying to shift thinking and having people believe in the purpose and mission of the organization or the city. And so after White Plains and some of the work in Fort Lauderdale, when he came to Homestead, obviously he realized that the things that we had done in other cities could be applied here. And working with the folks in Homestead has been phenomenal. I think, as I mentioned to you before, Josh, that I worked in the last 20-something years with lots of organizations, but the people here are passionate about giving back to their community, and they're very motivated to make change. So a lot of our work is around trying to connect the purpose and vision of the city with their personal visions of what they have to offer life and how they can be at their best to be able to deliver in their particular skill set.
So you're saying you're almost bringing people to a peak performance almost? Like, are you one of these like type of, self-improvement gurus, like a Tony Robbins kind of guy?
Well, it's interesting, as you mentioned Tony's name, I had spent in the late 80s a lot of time with Tony, working with Tony and doing his firewalks with him, and that was a phenomenal experience for me, walking on 50-something feet of hot coal and looking down and realizing, oh my God, I didn't get burnt. So the mind and body were connected, and that really got me excited in my life to see how I can kind of bring those abilities, skills, motivation, confidence to the people I work with.
Well, yeah, tell me a little bit about the running across the coals there. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how does that
the
work?
Interesting thing that Tony was doing in the city in '88, and he is back in March, in fact, about a month and a half in New Jersey, and the firewalk was just a metaphor for transcending fear. And people have fear in their life. I try to describe it as false evidence appearing real, and it shuts them down in all aspects of their life. And the firewalk, which I thought would be at the end of the course after I learned all the material from Tony, was at the beginning, the first 3 or 4 hours. So you can imagine the panic in my eyes when I look down and see, almost, in this case, 12 feet, we made it to 52 feet a year later, of hot coals, 1,800 degrees. So being able to apply some of the skill sets that he taught me and being able to utilize them in my work. Obviously, I can't build firewalks, but I can try to help people transcend the things that in their own mind shut them down.
Now, I know you probably haven't been rolling out hot coals for our city staff here,
right.
But you've been coming down here every year at the city manager's request to help with the department heads here in the city. Tell me a little bit about the work you're doing with them.
Yeah, it's a kind of much more traditional work than firewalks, but in the beginning it's about really creating a connection with each of the workers to make sure that, and department heads, to make sure that they understand the common language that we all use. And having been around with George and some of your leaders for many, many years, they're familiar with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen Covey and some of the work that we do with situational leadership. The long and short of that is we help people understand not only how to manage people, and help give them the direction and support they need as they move through their evolution, because all people are growing, but also to motivate them and to get them passionate about the vision of the city. But also to meet people in different places, because we're all in our own evolution, sometimes in great places, sometimes not so great places. And the place to begin with all of employees, if you're a leader, is with yourself. So trying to connect with them to understand who they are, what their personality style is, and how to be the best them or the best you in terms of presenting yourself to your staff, and trying to get people motivated not only to meet individual needs, but to meet the homestead needs in terms of what the vision is for this city as the years go on.
Right, and this also translates to just about anybody, right?
Right. Well, in my life, the last 30 years, working in clinical services, being a licensed family therapist, as well as doing social psychology for major universities, I work with athletes and individuals, but I also work with corporations and cities like I do down here. The similarities between all the work that I do is being able to get people in touch with wanting to first look at themselves and feel comfortable, not just with their strengths, but also embracing their challenges. And so, believe it or not, Josh, that's easier said than done, because a lot of folks have been very well protected through their upbringing not to want to share that piece of them. So early on, it's trying to get people, the leaders in particular, comfortable with themselves so that they can be really comfortable with their employees. And that has a lot to do with trust and building that kind of rapport, and then have them go and self-examine themselves in terms of how they deal with stress and where they're in balance, but also where their challenges are, where they might be losing balance, not just physically, but also emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and in their relationships. So a lot of the work is on kind of getting themselves centered, making changes in their life, because people are really generally stuck until adversity and pain occurs. And by changing themselves, that energy shifts, changes their ability to lead other people.
You mentioned people making changes in their life. And I know, I mean, it's almost 60% of adults here in America struggle with overweight and obesity. Over 30% of kids and adolescents struggle with overweight and obesity. We were always told since we were kids that to exercise and to eat right. Eat your vegetables and go out and play. Why is that such a tall order for people nowadays?
That's a great question. We really are a victim of our own heredity, but also a victim of our own conditioning from our youth. And oftentimes people don't realize that they're not only being conditioned by family members, but by society and marketers in terms of what they eat and how they move their body. So yeah, it's really around 65% of adults are not only obese, most of them, but a lot of them have a lot of other challenges. 35% of adolescents and kids are overweight or obese. I think 17% are obese, which is grossly overweight. And the thing that gets me even more is the statistic on preschoolers in low-income areas, that 30% of them are either obese or overweight. And so the thing for me is the selection of food. Why would poorer people have more compromised health issues? It's because they don't have the resources to choose healthy foods. And so for me, especially being in the field of addiction for almost 3.5 decades, people don't understand that food can be the #1 issue that people are kind of stuck on. And being able to make changes with their body, to be able to exercise and move and sleep and eat, it's really easier said than done. It seems obvious for us, but just because you have a thought that maybe you're overweight or that you're eating poorly doesn't mean necessarily you can translate that into change or action.
Wow, okay, now I want to move on to marriage, because 2.5 million Americans divorce every year, and the divorce rate has gone as high as over 50% in recent years. Why is it so difficult for people to have a successful and healthy marriage these days?
Well, that's a great question, Josh. I think the struggle is not just around committed relationships like marriage, it's just around relationships in general. Working with couples and individuals for over 30 years, this issue is prominent. Most people who come to see me are seeing themselves in relationships that are toxic, not healthy, or not able to have the ability to join and connect with people. And these are not people who are young in their young 20s. It's people who are in their mid-30s and 40s that really yearn for this kind of connection, human connection. And between you and I, this issue of technology and how people are communicating works against us, because what it does is that it over-relies the communication based around texting and around communication through things like Facebook and social media, and underscores the importance of the interpersonal connection face-to-face. So it's quite challenging for most of us who are working in the field to get people to a place where they understand there's a skill to connect. There's a set of rapport-building skills to meet people. But also, you have to know which people are healthy to meet. And I think in my upbringing and in the upbringing of many people who maybe have been married or in committed relationships for a long time, we learned a skill set in terms of commitment and communication that is not necessarily being imparted to young people today. So I think to answer your question as succinctly as possible, as quickly as possible, people need to understand what they want in a relationship. They need to understand what are the core aspects or characteristics of another human being that help support them but also complement them. And then they need to be able to select how to move toward those people, not just move toward people that come into their lives that may not necessarily be healthy individuals in the sense of creating the kinds of lives that they're looking for.
And you mentioned social media, and over the past 20 years, like 30 years, that's our biggest technological advancement, I think, is communication.
Absolutely.
I mean, now you can FaceTime, Skype. Right. How is social media and these technological communication advances affect our relationships nowadays?
Huge question for me, and an area that I write about a lot is what I think the future-paced complications of social media could be. There's enormous gifts to social media, but this cultural kind of ADD, attention deficit, is really being programmed into young people who have very little patience to be able to stay in the moment and communicate. And I'm also with a lot of people who are obsessed about social media. So my joke to my students is always, if you're up all night and trying to track on Facebook where your individual partner who you haven't dated for 2 years is, and you're doing this for multiple hours waiting for a checkup or a check down or some sort of response, you need to get a life. It's a life of your own. And so is it possible that these kinds of relationship issues on social media are impacting physical health as well? Absolutely. And this is where I think the connection between the technology issue that you just brought up is connected in a very profound way with general life balance issues, not just around physical being, but also mental and emotional and relationship issues.
Now, what if you're a single person who is a very busy person? Like I meet a lot of people in New York and Los Angeles, even here, like in Homestead in Miami. You have a lot of career-driven people, and they do have their own lives, but they're struggling with finding the right person, relationships. What are some struggles, and what can solutions that people can do in this situation?
And I think you really have to know yourself first, in terms of not having a perfect image, an idealized image that you'll pursue and never find, but an image in terms of what are the kinds of attributes of a human being that kind of complement you. In my business as a family therapist, oftentimes I see patterns where people are just recreating old, uncomfortable kinds of communication patterns that they really never worked out in their kind of family of origin, and now are kind of selecting new partners in their own life that kind of speak to unfinished issues that they maybe have not looked at. For instance, we see a lot of people who are maybe looking at helping and enabling people because they had that role in their family of origin, but yet the people that they're attracting have all kinds of issues that are not necessarily the healthiest of lifestyles, including addiction, and they get caught up in patterns not just for months, but for years, caring for the other individual, but not themselves. So I think, to answer your question as shortly as I can in this kind of interview position, is making sure you understand, number one, what is the attributes of the ideal person that you're moving to, but also what are your kind of challenges and shortcomings. And we have assessment tools where people kind of look at what they're doing well and not so well, and identifying little things that they can shift. And again, being clear, I think, is very important for me, of having the other individual know what they want to move toward, rather than just show up in the moment in kind of hope that there's a blessing or a miracle that occurs.
Career-wise, nowadays we have a huge amount of people who can't find a job, or we have people who are working and they're working more than they ever have. So what are some things that people that can't find a job, or the people that are working themselves to the bone and still not feel like they're ever getting to that American dream? What can you offer them?
Well, I'll speak specifically about that because this is key, especially in certain populations I work with, and then go general more in terms of balance in life. I think careers are some things that people try to aspire to attain, but never seem to reach it because they're looking for aspects of the material world in the job, whether it's great hours or good money, and don't realize that oftentimes they can be great contributors in the particular job they're in, but not feel spiritually fulfilled or emotionally fulfilled. So for me, and Stephen Covey did excellent work on this in his literature, is to get people in tune with their life purpose, or the things about their life that not only sustain their energy, but make them who they are, and then try to find employment that kind of meet that criteria. I say to college students all the time, they're in their last year and they're not certain what they want to do, is find an activity or a set of activities where you lose all track of time. You're so engrossed, so passionate about what you're doing, and go get paid for that. So for me, it's getting people clear about what they want, and then through the use of a lot of vocational tools, being very specific about the core competencies you need and the experiences you need to be able to build those opportunities in your future to land those jobs. Now, in a more general sense, which I want to move toward, is this issue of life balance, because in my work, I think I find a lot of people who are very successful in careers, whether they're athletes, Olympic athletes like I work with, or corporate leaders, that are totally out of balance in other aspects of their lives. So is it possible that you can have a lot of affluence in the material world and have horrible relationships? And can you have poor thinking and emotional skills but still have affluence in terms of your career? Can you have a great physical body and be able to kind of be very, very comfortable with who you are physically, but not be able to attract people or not be able to control your thinking? So the long and short is my work on Life Balance Advantage that I've done a lot of writing over. In the last 20 years, in all of my work, I'm trying to get people, whether it's in Homestead or young kids that I work with in my practice or at college, to examine their level of balance in the physical, emotional, mental, relationship, and spiritual domains. So the concept I'm trying to get across now is that you could be out of balance in a career, but it could have a lot to do with what's not going on in other aspects of your life, physically, emotionally, mentally, and interpersonally. And so in the physical domain, if we just stopped and talked about physical being, it's not just about, like we said earlier, the food people are choosing. It's the choice for movement. Believe it or not, it's still as it was 50 years ago. Most people who are depressed don't need to take pharmaceutical drugs. They need to move their body. And the pharmaceutical industry, I don't want to get a large discussion into this, but it's a huge factor in my business where it's a $271 billion business. And when you start thinking of 700,000 adverse effects and 42,000 deaths a year to misuse of pharmaceutical drugs taken as prescribed, it's huge. When you think of, if you look at two statistics, I think that are profound to me, that there is 1 million children who have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And believe it or not, 500,000 with antipsychotic meds. I think there was 20-something thousand that are under the age of 6. So this issue of shifting body and shifting mind and physical perspective based on an external pharmaceutical drug or something else that maybe is not pharmaceutical is something that we pretty much have been conditioned to in this country. So getting people not to kind of fill themselves with unhealthy things, including food, as a way to find balance is what I do. So is it possible that you could be in balance physically but not be in balance emotionally? Getting into that domain, I can't tell you how many leaders I know in great corporate positions that don't know the difference between a feeling and a thought. So they can tell you what they're thinking, but they can't tell you I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling depressed. And even if they could, they don't have the second skill, which is being able to communicate it to another human being. It's so much easier to use a negative emotion and communicate, I don't like you, versus I love you. And people don't have the ability, as crazy as it seems, Josh, to literally be able to identify what they're feeling and being able to communicate it. So people get, as I said, emotionally stuck, and they need to be freed up. And feelings are directly related to mental and physical health. When we talk about the mental field, huge issue for me because people are, again, not realizing that their thinking patterns are keeping them up literally all night. There are people who are not performing on a corporate level or in any level of their life because they're not sleeping. And they're not sleeping because they're doing all kinds of things, including the social media, and obsessing on thoughts and not know how to reboot their biological computer. So simple skills around meditation, and we know meditation and we know things like journaling and finding your gratitudes in life, shift thinking, being able to specifically help people shift their thinking is what we do. And I've been meditating myself, transcendental meditation, for 41 years, twice a day, 20 minutes twice a day. I don't know how people don't meditate. So oftentimes in our business, what people are doing is they're taking an external substance, a food, or some sort of chemical as a way to shift their thinking. And people need to feel safe in a crisis that they can go inside with nothing in them and shift their thinking. And that's the mental plane. The interpersonal plane, I can't tell you how many people are fueling their lives with toxic relationships. They're continually picking the wrong people, not on a conscious level, as a way of recreating old dances from their family of origin. So getting people to kind of examine themselves, as I said earlier, choose what kinds of relationships they want, not focus on what they don't want, because be careful what you ask for, you might just get it, is a lot of the work I do with couples and relationships. And then last but certainly not least is the spiritual domain. This issue of finding purpose in your life, feeling yourself connected to something larger, is something that a lot of people are disconnected from. And getting people to kind of realize that there's a part or aspect of themselves that doesn't age, their spirit. And being able to connect that some people think, and I'm one of them, that you need spiritual moments each day, moments to transcend, to get outside yourself. You can do that not only in terms of a religious experience, but if you're not religious, you're agnostic or an atheist, you still can transcend by having all kinds of experiences that get you outside yourself. Whether that's music or whether that's being in places where you are uplifted is what I do to try to help people who are kind of deprived in the spiritual domain to be able to make those shifts. So long and short, what I'm trying to do, Josh, is have people look at themselves, not be shame-based, but embrace their gifts and challenges the challenges of where they're out of balance, not only being able to determine which of those domains, but the first 4 steps to move towards specific change in 30 days is what I do. Because getting people to kind of identify what they want to do is only half the challenge. The other half is getting them motivated to move through whatever they're in life and to see success in small steps and be able to attain and reach manageable steps rather than sabotage themselves.
Wow, Mark, and I know this is just a nugget of knowledge of what you do here with everyone, and we want to thank you so much for coming down here and giving us each one of our staff members these block of time here to work with us on this, like you say, life balancing. And we appreciate you coming down here, all your work you've done for us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And everyone back at home, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.